Welcome to Business Not 101, a podcast that introduces and explores the uncommon side of business, from the spark of the aha moment, the napkin business plan, to the launch. We look at the problems, the roadblocks, and the solutions, often pieced and hacked together along the way. I'm your host, Olivier Bousset. Today in our full interview series, I'm joined with JADI Kindred, founder of Accent Unique, a language school for business professionals that has over a decade of experience teaching English as a second language. We explore her aha moment and how she built a community around her business, and so much more.
Thanks for having me today.
Absolute pleasure. So we got a chance to talk before, so this is not our first time. And so I want to start off with, like typical, your 60-second business pitch.
Yes, well, I started a private school, a language school in 2011, really because I wanted to find a language school I wish I had when I first moved to Quebec. I'm originally from Saskatchewan and I had to learn French as an adult, and I really understand the challenges my clients face on a day-to-day basis, working through their fears of speaking a second language. So that's what inspired me to start my company. And it's really the main goal is to increase confidence for my clients to be able to expand their companies to either new markets or even new clientele. And I also like working with human resource departments to help employees have more, retention and satisfaction at work. And then that brings increased profitability. So yeah, it just ties in nicely with helping business professionals really have more confidence in themselves to grow.
Excellent. That's quite a great description. I love it. So now, one of the questions I always ask people is your aha moment. But since we already get to talk, you really have sort of a unique backstory to where you got to aha. So let's go with that, because I think people would love to hear this.
Yeah, I'm a traveler. I love traveling. I love cultures. I love learning new languages. And so that inspired me after college to volunteer with the Shuar Indians in the Ecuadorian Amazon jungle. And while I was volunteering there, I was helping, the young kids in this little dirt hut improve their English, but they didn't really want to learn English. And I don't like pushing languages on anyone. So at night, when I was living with my host family, the adults actually asked me if I could help them improve their English. And I couldn't believe it. I just had such an awakening moment for me. And I was young then. I was, 19 years old. And I thought, this is so amazing that people really value this and what I'm able, English is so easy for me and they value this so much. So that was such an aha moment. And that inspired me to, when I came home, to volunteer with the Regina Public Library to help immigrants improve their English for work. And then I found myself unexpectedly in Quebec. And again, people would just stop me anywhere, even in the grocery store, and they would ask me to help them improve their English for a job interview and to have more confidence. And so when they traveled to English speaking countries, and I just couldn't believe that people wanted to pay to speak with me. I just couldn't believe it. So I love this province and I decided to establish my company here.
Wow, that's a really cool story. I love that. I love that. Like, I had a vision of what you were sitting down and having, like, by lab side. Really interesting. And it really sort of gives you a moment where you say, this is an interesting aspect. Here, it takes a unique person to do so, because you really have to feel comfortable. You have to have emotional intelligence to be able to connect with your customers, because you can't just be saying, okay, now I'm going to teach you how to say red in French, rouge, and then turn around and say, repeat after me, right? You need to have something. So do you feel like it's something that you were just born with, or is it something that you learned at school or someplace, or where did you get that?
Oh, I like that question. I think generally, I overgeneralize often. I think that people don't often know their gifts. So I didn't know teaching was my gift until until people told me that. So I think it is natural in me. I never went to school to become a teacher. I actually went to school to work in the tourism industry because I love cultures. And then when after I moved to Quebec, I had to learn how to teach English as a second language because, it's like learning another language to teach another language. I didn't know how to segment, verbs and adverbs and verb tenses and all of that now I have to teach. But my clients never ask me about the training that I did to be able to teach English. They want me to make sure that courses and classes are fun, dynamic, that I can listen to them, that I'm there to help them have confidence and correct any of their errors or their uncertainties. They want a time in their week to look forward to the English class. And they often do. This is often their highlight of the week, which I just feel so privileged to be able to be a part of their week.
I think that's incredible. And it's so true. Oftentimes people want something that they can connect with. And I found this really interesting. You actually mentioned fun. And that's something you don't hear every day, right? But it's true. It's still an educational format. So fun is really important for people. So when you started, you had your aha moment, you came here and you built your business and you decided, okay, how am I going to do this? You didn't start with a team of people, you started by yourself. So what was your first sort of foray? How did you seek out? Was it customers coming to you and you sort of built it up? Or was it something that you said, okay, at one point I have my 3-4 fans, customers that keep coming back to me. How do I expand that? And so really, where did you go? How did you go from one customer asking you, teaching one person in their living room to having your own business?
Yeah, wow. What a journey to begin a company. When I started, I did not speak French very well either. So just I had to, and then things were less online, so I had to drive down to register my company. I couldn't do it online, and I chose my name, and then I did everything. I built the company with zero, just the savings in my bank account. So I did everything. I created my website. And then at that time, there was still the Yellow Pages book. Do you remember like the big fat yellow book? That
No,
was like,
I'm too young for that. So.
that was that, like, I'm so young, but I feel so old because that's how I started. It was like,
Yeah.
okay, is it time? Like I tell younger entrepreneurs, and they don't even know what that is. And it's just like, oh my gosh, this is how I started. And it's hard, like so people just found me online and it was very slow. I started early on networking. And I think that's my main point that I want to come across with speaking with you today is the importance of connection, the importance of meeting people. The clients that I have today are literally people I met at networking events 5 to 7 years ago. And it's not to kind of like overwhelm any listeners, but it's like the seeds we plant today really are there for our future. And what I'm doing today with my business is not going to have immediate results. I'm just like, okay, consistent steps, one by one, every day to my goals. And if I keep focusing on that, then in the future, I'll be able to reap all of those rewards and really build company and grow the company how I want to. So really, like, I started networking, but I didn't do it as serious as I do now. And so that's one of my actual regrets is if I would have been really persistent and consistent in my networking, then I'm sure I would have a lot more referrals and a lot more people that I would know today. So I'm
Yeah.
really focused on that this year.
That's interesting. So I find marketing is one of those things where it's a double-edged sword, right? When we start off, there's a finite amount of time and energy we can put into marketing.
Mhm.
And then as we grow and we have, there's financial means, you can actually hire a team. When you started off, you're talking about networking events, like we're looking at LinkedIn or local business events. But one of the questions I always ask people is like, well, how did you go and decide your direction that you're going to go and achieve to get your 1,000 fans that amplify your voice and your business voice? Was there something that you said, okay, at one point I'm going to just stop the one-on-ones, or I'm going to start doing a bigger events, I'm going to start doing live conversations, or in this case, like podcasts? What point did you feel like, yeah, I need to go and get a bigger audience?
It took me quite a long time. For 9 years, I did a lot myself. I outsourced some work and some contracts, but I was just slowly but surely growing my company just by myself. So I only could do as much as my energy and my time allowed, which, would be maybe a networking event at 7 a.m., teaching, working, sending invoices, and then sometimes doing a networking event at 5 to 7. So that was my capacity. And then 2020 happened. And for me and my company, it was an amazing paradigm shift because I was always offering classes online, but clients were less open to it and the government contracts were less open to it. And then they made it mandatory. And so I now have my whole mind open to the possibility that I do not need to stay within a 1 hour radius of my office. I can now expand on a global level. So from that moment, I really started to put a lot more energy in networking because I had no more limits. I had no more limits. And then now I can find teachers all over Canada, really. And I can find the best teachers for the best, for the client and the best fit for everyone. And so that really pushed me to expand and network on a more global scale. So I do weekly networking events, but I also kind of started a global power team for other business coaches. And we're actually in the process of trying to create this like global summit for coaches because we all have the niche market and we're online now. So there's no more borders. We don't see borders. It's just like, how can we help companies wherever that company may be based? And for me, to have a business meeting with someone across the world is just as easy as meeting with someone down the street from me. So now, like, the sky's the limit, and I'm really focused on being able to network more on an international level.
Wow, that's a great point. And just maybe I'm reading it wrong, but what I get from your conversation here is that you took your business as, because I didn't realize it's true, you had to be physically in person. I always sort of imagined my way would be that it's virtual, you could do anything you wanted to. But because you had to stay within this boundaries, it limited you. Now, do
Mhm.
you feel like your business has switched to more of like a service in sense of getting teacher and students together, and you are now the person who's managing that, as opposed to being somebody who's actually creating a classroom physically? You're going more virtual, but you're also acting more of a relationship builder.
Well, exactly. For pretty much my first 9 years, I was working in my business, as they often say. I was the business, and now I'm working on my business. So my days are spent building connections, business development, strategically creating new ideas and projects and ideas for my teachers. That's my ultimate goal: is to create jobs for Canadians. And there's so many people who, not everyone loves online, but I think I read somewhere that 39% of the population prefer online courses. And that's me. I'm part of the 39%. I am much more confident and much more comfortable online networking or teaching or doing interviews or anything than in person. So I really can relate to the 39%. And yeah, now I'm able to and there's, I guess, a lot of other people who are just like me. So when I have a job application, I have inundation of people sending their resumes because this is like such a fun job. Some of my teachers, they teach during the day at a school, and then at night in the weekends they teach for me because this is their fun job. To work with fun, dynamic entrepreneurs generally are very fascinating people to me. I'm very fascinated by entrepreneurs and their journey. They often, choose a different lifestyle, and I really enjoy working with adults. And so they come and work after as just their fun jobs. So
Yeah.
that's my ultimate goal, is to create more contracts for them.
Cool. And it's really interesting because so now I sort of picture this as it was not only this pivot in your business, but also the way that you're going about it. So now you're post, or I should say pre 2020, you had a different marketing plan. You obviously had a different goal to reach. Now that it's 2020's passed and you had this paradigm shift, you're now more online. How did you suddenly change? Because now that your whole business sort of pivoted, and now your role went from actual being in the business to now creating more businesses. Well, that changes your whole role along with marketing and branding. How did you do that?
How did I do that? I don't think I had a choice. I was pushed into this because of market demand. All of a sudden, there was some grants that came out in Quebec, and just so many people wanted English courses, and I there's only so many hours in a day. So it really pushed me to pivot. But with that being said, a lot of people, I think the important aspect of being an entrepreneur is to be adaptable. And I hear, kind of my whole network are all entrepreneurs. And so some entrepreneurs tend to think, okay, I'm just going to sit and wait it out and wait and go until things go back to how they used to be. And I don't have that belief system. I really have the belief system that as entrepreneurs, we need to adapt and things may never go back. And I'm not going to wait around for that. I made a decision to transfer even my current clients who were very, very resistant to online. They were like, no, JD, I'm just going to wait till you restart again. And I'm like, I'm starting and I'm not going back. This is my new business model. Like, do you want to try it? Do you at least want to try it? Because I find this to be like 10 times more efficient than what we did before. And they're resistant, but they're like, okay. So just being really confident that this is a really improved way of doing business, I choose not to go back. And I have to just respect my choice and respect, like, no, that's the decision I made for my company. And when people call me, sometimes they ask, oh, do you do in person? I'm like, I'm sorry. And by me saying no, I'm saying no to the potential of that contract. And they ultimately, surprisingly, say, oh, okay, it's okay. And they give me this contract instead. So it's really reassured me to go, no, when I was really, you know, centered and I knew that this is the best way to grow my company in the future, and whatever happens, happens, I ended up, having more business, and there's people who are open to the change as well.
Very cool. It's really interesting because when listening to you, I understand that part of your business is coming from the government, so from contracts, right? So that means you're being sent customers. In terms of customers, is this accurate? What I'm thinking here, is this right?
No, I wish I was sent
Okay, so I'm
contract.
wrong. Okay, let's see.
I wish. I ideally, I really, that's one of my future goals, is to work with government departments because they do have a budget for professional training. That's one of my dreams in the future. But right now, I collaborate with companies where they can go and get grants from the government for like 50% off English courses, or 100% reimbursed French courses. So I work directly with companies right now, and then they can go and ask for government grants.
Cool. So, but how did you get those companies? Are you reaching out to them individually, or are you do you have a master plan here? Like, okay, I'm going to build up this community, and then this community can amplify. And this sort of goes back to my 1,000 fans question. Where is your customers coming from? Is it still you pinging individually on LinkedIn to a customer? Or are you now looking, saying, okay, how do I get people to amplify my voice so they come to me?
Yeah, that's a big question and a big journey for me, because for 9 years I haven't been in sales. Like, for 9 years, people would call me many times if they wanted an English class. And now I've had to pivot and learn like sales and marketing. And this is a whole new domain for me, even after, like, this is my 10th year in business. And I feel like I'm just learning that now. But I'm very lucky because I have ads on Google, I have Facebook, I do LinkedIn. Like, I'm online. I'm on Yellow Pages. I'm online. I do networking. I do efforts.
Is Yellow Pages
But
still a thing? I don't know if does it still exist?
yeah, I get I
It
get
does?
I get most of my.
Wow,
Oh yeah, it's very good. I love Yellow Pages
that's funny.
online. Yeah, but what happens is people really want to improve their English or French. And so they seek my company out. And where I live up north, like, it's outside of the busyness of Montreal. So there's not a lot of competition, and they find me and they're like, okay, I want to work with you. And even though it's online, they like to work kind of local a bit sometimes. But they seek me out. They seek language classes. So I've been very lucky. And I don't I don't do enough prospecting. I don't contact people to ask if they want classes, which is something I definitely need to do. But I just like, there's something about, I don't like pushing, especially languages. Like languages, people really need to commit and really need to be interested in order to, attend the classes for a few months. So over the years, we've worked with people really seeking us out or referrals. Again, it's the networking events that all the energy I put in, for the last 10 years, it's referrals and re-signed contracts and so it just kind of slowly snowballs that way year
Yeah.
after year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So it's really it's organic growth based around you going to get that customer or referrals from you or any of your employees are getting those referrals, right? So it's really interesting. If you were to tell somebody, okay, I'm starting up a consultancy business tomorrow, what would be the key thing you would tell them, like here today in this present environment? What would be the key things that they should be looking for or doing to get customers, the first few customers, just like start the ball rolling? Because I think that's a hardship for a lot of people. Is like they want to be a consultant, they want to be management or business or a personal life coach. How do they go forward and find their first few customers, and how do they create that ball to start rolling? Because you had 9 years before you jumped in, but you were doing it one way. But how does somebody start today? In your
Yeah.
own opinion.
Yeah, one thing that's so important for me now is the importance of networking. I have met consultants who their first year had like zero business and then they started networking and they're up to six figures in the first year. And it's from referrals. And so I'm just such a strong believer in that. And when you have a network of people that trust and like you, and you have a whole group of people who are your sales consult, like they're your team to help you with sales that you don't have to hire. So that's one huge aspect that I really encourage people to do, especially now and how easy it is online. Like I literally networked with people all over the world, even in different languages, just because it's fun. Like I went to a networking event in Japan. It was just fun for me to like meet people from around the world. I went to Japan a couple of years ago and
Very cool. That's one of my go-to. I always wanted to go. I have never
yeah.
been to Japan. Yeah.
Oh, it's such an amazing country. Yeah.
Cool. So let me ask you. So these online events, these networking events, where do you find them? Are you finding them just like Googling online events? Because they have to be, I guess, somewhat specific to what you're looking for. Because you can't just be going on to a podcast event and then hoping to find customers there necessarily. Or is that the case? You just sort of hit every event.
No, no, again, like I think time and energy is so precious and I think entrepreneurs really need to focus on their goals and to use their time and energy like so precisely of to really help them achieve their goals. So I used to kind of go, oh yeah, random networking events here or there. And that it's rare to have a contract. Like it happened. I would meet somebody and people are like, hey, I'm looking for an English class. Let's start next week. But that was very rare. That's very rare. I really believe there's so many networking places, but I really encourage those to choose one and commit to it and really attend weekly, and ones that hold accountability. Because if you just go and visit and talk with friends, well, that's not using your time to the max. So really attending groups regularly, ones that are
Like
serious. Mhm.
like business, local business associations is what you're saying?
Yeah, like I don't know if you want me to name the one I'm with, but
You can, unless it's like private. You
no,
can. Go
no,
ahead.
no, it's not private at all. No, I'm part of Business Network International, and there's like, hundreds of thousands of members around the world. And so
Yeah.
it is literally a doorway. Like I can contact anyone around the world and say, hey, I would like to have a one-to-one meeting with you. And they're like, for sure. There's like zero question. So it just opens these doors that I would never have had the opportunity to before. And it's really about accountability. It's like, okay, like you show up every week and how did you help? And the whole idea of this philosophy is helping other entrepreneurs, which is a very strong value for me. Some maybe groups have different values. I don't know all of the networking groups'
Yeah, but
values.
BNI is really good, and
Hmm.
their sister company or sister association, Corporate Connections.
Yeah,
Corporate Connections.
yeah,
I was invited to that last 2 years ago in 2019, and I found it's a great way to meet people, and it was really people wanted to help each other out. I think that's
yeah,
sort of the mantra of the whole
yeah.
association within the localized BNI or
Hmm.
yeah BNI,
Hmm.
and I think that's really interesting. So that's really an association that you're saying, okay, make yourself accountable to your local business.
Hmm.
And so when you want to say, okay, now I want to go international, are you still using BNI as your main platform? Or are you now looking at, let's say, LinkedIn or Twitter or?
Well, I'm using BNI because we're all supportive of each other. It's kind of like it doesn't matter where we are in the
Yep,
world.
and we're
We
not
can
sponsored by BNI.
no, 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 we're
Just
not.
in case people are like, wait a
No,
second.
no, this isn't a BNI podcast. There's a whole BNI university, but
There
no,
is.
it's just this ease of connecting, and now, worldwide, which I just love. And I didn't use it before. When I was in BNI years ago, I was just stayed with my local area because that was kind of where I could only offer my services. But now I rejoined BNI because it's online right now. And that's just a game changer for me, and my mindset of like the possibilities and the collaborations. Now we can, create business with people literally all over the world with just as much ease. So I just love this. The part of me who loves cultures and different languages and meeting new people, like I just love this. So it's been fun the last year. And because now I can kind of delegate all these contracts to my team, I have time to meet new people, which I never had before. So that's a big thing too. I've met consultants who again, like, sell time for money, or they say, oh well, they only want me. That's what I thought. I thought people only wanted to speak with me when they learned English, and they maybe did. But then I was like, no, I found my team is even better than me. Like, they're amazing teachers and so fun and so funny. And so I find people who I wish I had, to be teachers. So it's easy to transition, and it's just like now it liberates this time for me to be able to grow my company. And that's one thing, if you're asking for consultants, what would they need? It's kind of like, yeah, you have maybe your own way of consulting, but to really create a program that you can give a team, and so you're able to then grow your company with extra time as well.
So talking about networking and in moving forward, what would you tell people would be, aside from one association like BNI or Corporate Connections, what's another way that you feel is really important for people to go off in the consulting and the coaching market segment to go and find new customers? Is there a live events, I would say, or is it really referrals by asking the customers to go and talk to and get them or bring them potential customers?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that's really underutilized is when you offer an amazing service, people probably would refer you, but you just may not have a referral system, or you may not even ask. Like, for years, I just never asked for referrals. And so that's something I personally want to work on myself, of like, wow, you're so happy. You're coming back year after year and you're telling people about it. But what if I had an incentive program or something to really encourage people to refer people to our company? So I think that's something that I personally want to implement more of in my company, and I think that shouldn't be overlooked.
That's a really interesting point. Is how do you top of mind? Because obviously, when somebody does a course and they've done their course and they walk away, they may need it more in the future, but in most cases, they become potential referrals for other customers. But how do you keep in the front of them constantly without just calling them up? I mean, sending a newsletter. What's one of the things you would do to keep your community active even after they finish the courses?
Yeah, top of mind. That's interesting. For years, I was just overwhelmed with running my business day to day. So I didn't have as much strategy and time to work on marketing as I do now. And for the last year, I've implemented regular posts on social media, meaning all of my social media. That's on my Facebook page, my LinkedIn page, my private LinkedIn page, Google, my business page, Instagram, all of these avenues, even YouTube, all of these avenues that I never had time for because I thought it was a waste of time. I was like, who has time for this? Like, that's just nonsense. And I started doing this, just one post a day. I have help to do this because I don't I don't put time into that. But actually, people contact me because of that. And it's like, what? And people who I met again years ago or who are thinking, oh, I need to contact JD for English. I need to contact, but they don't. And then they just see my post or they like my post and they're like, oh, yes. And I've had people come out and say, hey, JD, I saw your post on LinkedIn and I saw one post every day and every day I thought of you. And then finally I finally had a moment to pick up the phone and call you. So I always just undervalued that, but it's like, wow, just being seen, really nice. It's not sales. I do a really inspirational quote or a joke or something just to stay in top of mind. And it actually does work. Surprisingly to me, this is all new for me too, but it really does work.
Yeah, it's little things. It's incredible when you don't think about it. Just a simple little post. It just and people follow us. Yeah, that's I always feel the same thing. Like, who's gonna read my little post? Who's gonna look at my photo? Who cares? And you realize the amplification it does. So it's really interesting because
Mm-hmm.
that's something that you don't think of when you don't have a constant product. Because that service is not. It has a shelf life for that person, and then to amplify that for them to continue to think about you, it's not easy. So that's really
Mm-hmm.
cool. That's a great idea. Okay, listen, that's great. Now we get to the fun part. This is the really fun part for me. I get to ask you the rapid questions, and this is 3 random questions I'm going to ask you, and top of mind. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Perfect. So, what is the one productivity hack you can tell people? One thing you could say, like, this is what I do daily that really helps me.
What I've just implemented recently, I love to-do lists, and that overwhelming because the to-do list is just never ending. So what I've actually done with the help of my coach is to move my to-do list into my schedule, into a weekly schedule. So just this morning, instead of looking at it and it creates a lot of anxiety in me of like, oh my gosh, how am I going to accomplish this all? I actually have it blocked and segmented into a weekly schedule, which really relieves my stress. And I know that everything will be accomplished. Another productivity hack that I just started this year because of my coach. After 10 years, I finally have a coach. So that's one thing I would encourage all startups is that have a
Actually,
coach.
that's a really
Really?
interesting point. I didn't even think of that. Having a coach is
Yeah.
really important.
Oh, yes.
And that's something that most people don't talk about, but it's true. It's something that's like a mentor and then into a coach. Is it somebody that that you've met or somebody you seeked out specifically to coach you?
The first 6 months of my company, I was just doing everything by myself and clueless, absolutely clueless. I didn't know anything about business and I just jumped in, and I was like, okay, I need help. So I went, but I had a very limited budget. And so I sought, well, I looked for a mentor. And a mentor are volunteers. I'm a mentor. Like I love helping entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, any age, whoever want to help start a business. So I'm just passionate about that. And there's people like me who do this as a volunteer. So I found a mentor and I was with him for 3 years. And he is literally the reason why I'm in business today. The things he helps instill in me as an entrepreneur and the accountability and the confidence he gave me, he's literally why I'm in business today. And then I took a break. For many years, I had other projects and goals, and I took a break. And then now this is my 10-year anniversary, and I have really big goals this year. And so I really looked for a professional coach who can really bring me to the next level and help me level up. So I really looked for someone very expensive, very worth it. Before I started coaching with him, I increased my productivity in sales, more than I'd ever done in 10 years. So it is worth the investment for sure. But one thing he's helped me with is to have a 30-day action plan and to create only 5 priorities. And that really helps me focus because I love projects. I have so many projects. And it's just like every day I look at my 5 priorities and they're big priorities. They're like big things, but still I have, a priority by when, who's going to do it, and what is that result going to look like. So I've become so much more productive just by literally writing down my goals. I know everyone says this. I know. And I knew this. Like I read so many books and everyone says this, but literally if you do it, it works. It surprises
That's so
me, but
funny.
it really
It's
works.
true. It is true. Very
Yeah.
true. I know. I know. Most people think like journaling. It's like I tell people I journal every day, and they're like, "Well, does it really help?" I'm like, "It does. It
Yeah.
really does." And you see your change over the years,
Yeah.
and it helps you focus. And I love those points. I actually do the same thing, so it's really interesting. And that's a wise coach you have there because that's what I would
Yes.
do. So it's really
Very
good.
wise.
I love it. That's really good. Next question now. This is if you had to tell somebody one book they should read that would help their business, which one would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. And I want to say this more globally because I read a book a week and that I'm very focused on reading and I have this belief system that your company can only grow as much as you can. So literally every week I would refer that book. I just like, oh, everyone needs to read that book. Everyone needs to read that book. So I wish like that's one question I ask people all the time is what is your favorite book? And I I can't even think of one right now. There's so many. Like I just read, The Purple Cow, which is cool. And then,
That's a good one. Yeah.
like that's just like one. I love The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. I love just there's oh my gosh, there's so many, Millionaire Mind by Tara Eckert. Just to have
Mm,
because it helps me with my money mindset,
yeah.
because when I first started, I really undervalued myself. And when I started doubling and even tenfolding my hourly rate, that's when people actually decided to work with me. So I was the only one stopping myself from growth. I had to work on my mindset to get to that level to feel like what I was offering was worth that and that it offered that much value. So it was really only me stopping myself from growing. So
Interesting.
any books that
Yeah.
help with growth, I strongly
All right. That's like it's a
I
big open answer question
I
there. I love it
know.
though. It's true. It's really hard like when you read a lot of books, it's really difficult to find one. I have a huge collection of business books behind me and
Yeah.
one of my favorite apps is actually Blinklist that you can quickly go through because there's so many books that most of the book is very interesting, but sometimes you just want to get to the tidbit. So I think reading a lot of books is really good. But honestly, if it's really difficult. I agree with you to find one book that would be like there. That's the one to read.
I
One
just wrote that down. I'm going to look at that app, but I'm curious about yours. What's your book?
So I have a lot of them, and the books span. So I have like the 4 Hour Work Week, and I have sort of
Yeah.
like the staples, right?
Yeah.
But what I like is a lot of authors who not necessarily they're just business books. They're also about perception, your own perception. So you have to sort of build up your own perception.
Hmm.
And one of the things I find is really important in that you'll find some in fiction. You can sort of like nonfiction. You can go through psychology books, but I like books that really make me stop and think, how would I apply this to my everyday life? Because I'm not in, let's say, it could be about how I perceive people, I perceive race, how I perceive sex, how I perceive a whole bunch of things in my life. And I think those kind of books are really important in business because emotional intelligence is super important today. When
Hmm.
I'm talking to people, it's how I perceive them and how I perceive my situation and how I'm perceiving the conversation between us.
Hmm.
And books that make me think are really good. Otherwise, I love books that really come up and say, okay, look, here, this is what you need to do. One of my favorite books actually is it's a book called Get Higgy, which is a author from Netherlands. I connected on LinkedIn. It's a book of happiness, how to create your happy space in your house, in your office, and I think that was one of my favorite books. And that's why I started to create. And you can see behind me, there's a candle. I don't know if you can see it. It creates my space. My office space is where my sanctuary is when I'm able to talk to people, but as well as I'm able to work.
Hmm.
And that's the kind of things I could take away from books. But again, the whole book, one chapter sort of gave me that. But there's Blinklist is one of my favorite apps that I switched to. That actually you can find all the business books, and it gives you the 60 seconds fast version of it. And a lot of times you just need like a little bit of like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Hey, no problem. My last question. This is the one. How do you relieve stress? For me, it's candles and meditation. I'd say
Yeah.
yoga, but I'm not very flexible, so meditation's easier.
Hmm. Wow. Every day that is my focus. That's literally my focus every day is calming stress or anxiety because as an entrepreneur, I'm outside of my comfort zone every moment. Like this is my first podcast and that's terrifying. And it's like, yeah, I say yes. I say yes to things, but it's scary, and that's part of being an entrepreneur. So my morning ritual is super important. I I really believe in like a disciplined morning. So I wake up early, I I read every morning for at least a half an hour. I do yoga, at least 20 minutes of yoga. I also do rebounding. I used to love coffee, but like rebounding really helps have oxygen to the brain. I used to for years, for probably the first I would say before 2020, every day I would meditate for an hour. Then, 2020 hit and I just kind of became into like, oh, I need to learn. I was just hungry for knowledge. So I just started reading an hour every day instead of meditating. But that's my morning. Then every day I go for a walk. That's essential, I think. Just to leave the office, go for a walk, have and just exercise, and just to create that balance. Otherwise, in my times when I would meditate, that's when I had my most aha moments, business ideas, book titles, like everything came up in my meditation. And it was never a waste of time. It was the most, profitable, I would say, time of my day is to sit back and have more of a reflection of my day and my goals.
Very interesting. So, you know what? That sort of sparked me an idea. One of the things I do as well as meditation, I journal every day. And every day I go through my processes. And one of the things is that I find, I was talking to somebody who's just written a book about journaling and how they go about it. And they sort of built up their whole ebook about this. And it was about sales. And very interesting. And I know you're working on a book. And this is actually just, struck me like, we should talk about that before we let everything go. You're working on a book. Does part of your meditation, does your routine also include working on that book, or is it something that's completely outside of?
Yeah, I love that question. Someone contacted me and said, hey, we're looking for entrepreneurs. We believe everyone has a story, which is my belief as well. I believe everyone has a story. I think everyone needs to write a book. And he said, oh, we can help you write your book. And I was like, I have nothing to write about. And then I went for a walk outside in nature and it just hit me. Wow, this is my 10-year anniversary. Of course, I have 10 years of trial and error. Like I have so many lessons I've learned in this decade. And I really wanted to honor and commemorate my 10 years of being an entrepreneur. And so then over Christmas, I took 2 weeks off. And within 2 weeks, I had a book outline. I really took like,
That's really impressive. That's fast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It just downloaded. It was like, this is my outline. This is easy. It's called Intuitive Business Connections. There's 3 parts. One part is intuition, how I use my intuition to run, like to really operate in business. The second part is business, like logistics of business, of like having a mentor and the importance of productivity and all of these things. And then the last part of the book is connections and the importance of networking and building connections and meeting people from around the world. And so after January 1st, I decided to start writing this book. And I had no idea what I was going to write, but I started every morning with the 1-hour meditation and I said, okay, this is my title. And I would meditate and literally stories would just come and flow through me. And I was like, wow. And then I would type them or I'd record them and and within a couple months, I completed this book.
Wow, that's
And
really impressive.
it was crazy, and I just like I have to trust that what I shared and what I said was what people need to hear. And I'm going to be publishing it this month and I'm super excited. And it doesn't have to be so complicated, like 5 years ago, I wrote one book and it was like my life dream to write this one book. And it took me all of my savings and 5 years of work. And this one, it was just like a couple months. I did it myself. I published it myself. Easy, and it's easy. So
Easy, yeah. Today with self-publishing and ebooks,
yeah,
it's so much easier.
so
That's
much.
that's really amazing. So one of the last things, I guess, before everybody leaves this podcast, to make sure to go and click on the podcast transcript, and they will have the link to your book and as well to your business and how to connect up with you and reach out and just maybe ping you and ask some questions as well.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for the time. It's been an interesting first podcast for you, I'm sure. And thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. What a pleasure.
Thanks again.